Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Beaufort County Board of Education Academic Committee, November 20th, 2024 p.m. We're located at the District Educational Services Center, Conference Room 3, remote hybrid conferencing meeting. This meeting will be live streamed on the school board YouTube channel. To speak during academic committee public comments, please sign up using the public comment form. You can find a BOE public comment form on our website. You'll receive a phone call during public comments where you'll be able to speak and address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes on issues within the committee's domain. The forum will be limited to 15 minutes. Citizens desiring to participate in person must fill out a public comment card that can be obtained from the board clerk upon arrival. All right, call to order. I'm going to pledge allegiance, please. United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A motion for approval of the agenda. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any public comments? No, ma'am. And we actually need a motion to remove the committee meeting minutes of the 23rd. All those in favor? Oh, E13 discipline.
So I actually did a full presentation of this last time, but fought the head, not the heart. This is my first time bringing a OE forward in my new role. So I skipped some steps. So I'm going back to rectify that tonight. So we're not going back through the entire OE, but I provided for you today is an executive summary of the OE there, and you'll see that it has the 2 signatures there. We would not add, as I've learned, the 3rd signature for the board chair. And so this part was done. And tonight when I do OE 14, this part is done. So we're gonna do that tonight. I did change the format a little bit going forward. I did add one particular additional thing. It's just showing where where parents acknowledge the code of conduct and where we have the code of conduct on our website. But I've previously gone through each of these areas. This is just a heightened executive summary of it. So everything that was in the presentation had already been presented to the board, to committee. Really, it was just an additional adding of the cover page to make sure I was compliant with the requirements of the OE. I'm good on that part. That's it. Okay.
So 14, learning environment, treatment of students.
Yep. So now we do have a presentation on this. So I kind of wanted to talk about formatting for you guys. It depends on which one you want to follow. So I have a separate document. This time I try to really model and cater the presentation that's going to be in your binders with this separate document. So what we'll follow along with on the screen that you'll have will be what's in your binder. What's in the second document is a condensed version. Okay. So all the information that is in here is also in this binder. The binder is more of the PowerPoint presentation that we'll put up here. This is just the separate Word document that has all of the requirements of OE 14 as well. So as she's getting that set up, just like last time, we'll be able to flip through our binder. So if you have your binder, you'll be able to turn it sideways and make it easy for you to keep up. There's a lot of documents in there. You ready? All right. So OE 14. When we're going through OE 14, I want to give you some information on the firm. So some of the information that we're presenting about our OE 14 is very sensitive for students. So I have to be very mindful of that when we're talking about data and the data presentations of students. I have to be FERPA and HIPAA compliant when I'm putting these presentations together. So we'll start there. There's 4 areas of OE14. OE14 is learning environment and treatment of students. And so then you have all the operational expectations laid out there. So after this page, the format we will go 14.1. I'll talk about some of the things we've done in there, and then you'll have artifacts for each one as we go. So they're tabbed out that way so that if you need to refer back to anything in here, it's easy for you to navigate in this larger binder. Okay. So there is an overall executive summary that's in there, and that really just emphasizes the major parts you're going to see. So MTSS is the first part. I want to, I'm not going to read verbatim, but our MTSS process it is the law in South Carolina, but it's also our process when students are having academic or behavioral challenges in school. It is a way to provide a support system for that student. One outcome could be that the student ends with a 504 plan, or another potential outcome is the student could end with an IEP. All right. The other major thing that you're going to see today is that enhanced staff training for crisis management, behavioral intervention, mental health, and supported by increased community partnerships. I did read that part because that is very, very complex. You're also going to see some data in here to support why we took these additional steps to support our kids and families. And the last part, I think, is one of the most important parts, especially leading into this, is documenting and capturing all the services that we're providing. That is not necessarily easy to do, but while you're doing that, safeguarding and protecting student information. So I'm going to do my best today to be able to show you these things while remaining compliant. That last point there. And as always, like last time, I'm going to keep rolling. If you have a question or comment, jump right in there, and I will more than gladly stop and expand upon any area. So 14.1 is a supportive climate that promotes high student achievement. You're going to see in there, we really do believe in the whole child approach, and that's the academic and behavioral support. You'll see the different areas that are listed out in there. There are many administrative regulations that we update and practice that guide our behavior in these areas. You're going to look at those. I will list those out on the next page, and I'll kind of go through some of them. Anytime I reference an administrative regulation in these documents, I did print them again to separate them out for you to refer back to. So I've got them organized by each area. So 14.1's got a set of admin regulations. 2's got their own set, but it's going to be separated out there. So if you do come back and refer back to this, it's easier for you to reference. One of the things we actually talked about this some in OE13 as well, but the fidelity inventory review for all schools to measure where they were in that process. And honestly, that has been a pivotal point that helped us to guide us where we are for 25-26 this current school year. Also, I may be presenting this on behalf of student services, but many of the things you're going to see here today impact all departments within this office. So for example, with MTSS, there is an entire focus within ISD, instructional services, with Ms. Sackman. She is now over, that was one of her primary responsibilities is MTSS for the academic side. And we collaborate as departments with student services and ISD. Student services is addressing the behavioral side of MTSS. ISD is partnering with us on working on the academic side of MTSS. So that way, that is an example of showing how we're going into whole child to improve support for them. Okay. So we're going to go to the next one. These are all of the different administrative regulations. I actually went back and reviewed the past couple years of how OE14 was presented. It may not look exactly the same as has been presented in the past, but we wanted to have a systematic way to show them that we're meeting the expectations of the OEs. and being able to demonstrate that. So when we have administrative regulations that fall in one of those categories that helps guide our actions, I felt like it was important for you to reference there. And so that you can see, you don't have to flip for them. So this is going to be a formatting thing so everybody sees. So after 14.1, when you see an additional tab that flips it up, these next documents through here, and I'm not going to go through all of these. These are the supporting documentation that supports 14.1. So really in this first section, you're not going to have the charts and graphs. These are all the administrative regulations that guide us in meeting the operational, the 14.1 portion of the operational expectation. So what it does do though is for Ms. Robin has to scroll quite a bit in order for it to catch up. However, it makes it easier for you in the future to refer back to if you wanted to see a specific artifact that's in there. You will see in the future documents. In this particular one, this is just administrative regulation supporting that. In future tabs, you will see handbooks of different kind of things in there that support POE. For now, we're looking to 14.2. And that is support for staff addressing behavioral challenges and crisis intervention. Do want to tell you there's a lot of overlap within this OE between 14.2 and 14.4. Many of the supporting documents that I put in for 14.2 could have easily gone into supporting out 14.4. Okay, so I wanted to dig into some of these things, and I highlighted some areas that I really wanted the committee to understand. Staff training and trauma-informed practices, ACEs, and mental health needs. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So when a child's had some traumatic experiences in the home, or at home, outside of school, wherever, at any point in life, those experiences, if not treated well within school, can have adverse outcomes for students, both behaviorally and so you're going to see that's where the trauma-informed portion goes. And ACE is just a scale that helps kind of measure the different types of experiences that a child may have experienced. The prepared crisis response training, that is something that we do at our district office. We have trainers here. We have a train the trainer model. Our trainer actually can not just train other staff, give this training. This is Andrea Murray, and she's also qualified, certified to give the prepared training. The prepared training is centered around how you respond to a crisis, the mental health support. It is preparing our staff to respond to a school if there's been a traumatic event or a crisis type of thing. And then we have other types of assessments, and you're going to see some acronyms in here. I'm going to do my best to not only explain them, but demonstrate how many we have done. You will see some data charts and graphs that may not be in this particular section, but there will be in other sections. So we do a lot of training for staff in this area. So there's two parts in here. When it says 267 staff trained, remember this is for school year 24-25. We do ongoing trainings with our staff as well. So there's two types of assessments that our staff are going to give here. The first one in here is called BCAM, and that is the threat assessment training. So if a child makes a threat in any form of way, the school has to evaluate it, even if it is done so in jest. Even if a child makes the ever so slightest comment, if it meets a certain threshold, we go through an entire process. It does, the outcomes come, and you'll see the different levels that they come out, but we have to take all of these very, very seriously. So we have a process for that, and we have a process for documenting those. The last portion of this one, those systems are now, all those assessments are now uploaded into an online system. And it helps us keep track of those, it helps us document those, and it helps us document the interventions that occurred after the fact. Okay.
267 trained last year. You get some more.
We're actually gonna have more this year. We've scheduled more trainings, not just prepared, we've scheduled more prepared trainings this year. And we've scheduled more ongoing. So we have initial threat assessment training, and then we have refresher training. So we're really going to push to make sure that as many staff as possible are trained to include, Dr. Lee collaborated with the executive directors last year, student services, and ensuring many of our principals were also trained to understand what their staff are carrying out in the book. So when we raise that level of awareness with the principal, more and more staff are getting trained as well.
So years ago, the principal can actually have the AIDS inventory conducted, and an expert came in on committee and sharing resources through student services as well.
And we have a lot of outside partnerships to help us do that. We've worked with Hopeful Horizons on those. We've worked with CAPA on those. They're also certified to do some of these trainings. So instead of just relying on those outside agencies, we've had our own staff get trained to be able to do this training as well. So this is an example of some supporting evidence when you see that. These are an example of the different types of the different threat assessments that we would have conducted. And then the graphic shows where they fell out. So some are high, some are rescreened. Some, when you see many as the low, you see that number goes up to 237. It may be frustrating for folks. But when children make comments, just like this happens with adults, we still have to take them seriously and we have to put them through a process. So in that process is time consuming, but you don't want to leave any stone unturned when comments are made either in writing or in words. And so we're going to get into that a little more in this presentation. We have mechanisms in place to kind of flag when certain comments are made, either in email or in Google Documents or any of their own work. We have a process to do that, but I wanted to be able to show you a digital representation in 24-25 of how many projected in there and the outcome of those. Then in addition to that, so these are the administrative regulations that you're going to see. Some of these are in the process of being updated now as well. So some of those are on the docket to be updated to the board in the next couple of months. We'll go through. They're already in place, but we are providing updates to some of these as well. The next tab, as Robin is scrolling, this is something I do want you to refer back to after the presentation. These are our dashboards that we have when we pull this data. You'll be able to see and go through some of this data. The reason that I didn't dig into this a little further and display it, some of the numbers within certain schools that they're put out are low numbers of kids. Anytime there are less than 20 students involved in a category, you're not really going to see me dig real deep into that, and so we don't identify a specific student at the school site. But there are lots of colorful, and these are also in some of these charts and graphs, if I can fit in there, are also in the Word document as well. I didn't want it to be just a boring fun document for you, but there are lots of these documents in there to include the affidavits we do for students, the different types of assessments. It breaks it out by school, and it breaks it out by grade level as well. So there's lots of data and information in there to include after that, to include all the administrative regulations. I don't see charter school youth tracking in there. Not the same way. We support them for some of these services, but we don't track at this level of data for them. She's going to get down to 14.3. All right. This one is this is protection and appropriate use of confidential student information. This is what makes this type of presentation a little bit of a challenge because we are bound to do this part. So we have annual Safe Schools training. We have an online system called Vector that we use for all staff. I've provided some evidence or some screenshots of what that looks like. Regular monitoring of climate, attendance, and discipline data. That is something that this year, as I'm new in this role, that we're really pushing is to present more data to the principals in real time. And we've had some opportunities to do that, but those are lessons from last year to get, especially in the area of student attendance. That is something that we are gearing up to really take on and address as a system. And so, but it starts with providing the data to the schools so we need exactly what areas we need to focus on. A couple of our other tools that we're using there that we'll talk about are PowerSchool Educators Handbook. So PowerSchool is our student information system. That's what we use in the state of South Carolina. Educators Handbook is our referral management system. Those are for discipline and for truancy. Gaggle and Stop It from last year are two of our programs. So Gaggle is in, I will get into that a little bit further in here, but Gaggle is one of our systems that we use in two ways. It monitors things that associated with Beaver County School District for our students. If they write or type or email messages or things that meet certain criteria, we get notifications on. So it is something that has been both during school and after school hours. And Stop It is our self-reporting system for bullying and other things of that nature, things that have concerns. Stop It previously it replaced Be Something Safe. So that was a new platform that we have. So there's two different platforms. There is some overlap between the two, but Stop It is more the self-reporting mechanism. The reason I said overlap, both Gaggle and Stop It have a law enforcement automated system in there. So if something gets reported both during school or after school, and it meets a certain threshold, it immediately contacts law enforcement. And law enforcement will go to a home or to a school immediately if they get reports from the system. So it's contacting us simultaneously as it's contacting them. And then you're also going to see our collaboration with outside agencies. I've highlighted a couple here. The ones I highlighted here are state agencies. Two of these are state agencies, which is the Department of Social Services and the Department of Juvenile Justice. And then we have partnerships with several mental health agencies as well. So that's actually my certificate. I just didn't click my name on it, so you can see it. But our staff annually have to go through training, and one of the trainings that they have to do through the system is the FERPA training, and that's the confidentiality of records. Something that we take extremely seriously, both in the release of records to outside partnerships and agencies. It's not just us in these presentations. It's when we're working with, especially when we're working with our outside partners, making sure that we're sharing records appropriately, and we have strict protocols that we have to follow when sharing information about. And so that's something that's ongoing, and then we do training. If there's a need for retraining for staff, we have the ability to do that as well, to include accountability for staff when they don't conduct the trainings. We have to go in there. We have a monitoring system for that as well, and that is active, that we go through and ensure that all staff meet the required threshold. That is an example of that. There are less administrative regulations for this one, but they're actually very important. So this outlines, I do want to talk about a couple of these for a second. The technology acceptable use policy, that's the one that are most commonly known by parents. Parents usually don't know, can't usually call by name an AR, but they're going to know that one. They may not know it's an administrative regulation, but they are going to see that. The other two do really help guide our practice, and those are our systems that how we maintain records over. And so those are outlined in the next tab. You're going to be able to see the supporting documents there. So the screenshot of the vector training, I did not pull out more to put in here. It is difficult for me to pull out vector trainings without identifying specific employees. So that's why I took the screenshot route, so not to highlight those. I had to do the same thing. So I can tell you the threat assessment trainings. I can tell you they're prepared trainings, but I try not to identify specific employees of who has or has not been trained. So that's why I provided some screenshots for it and just give you the numbers to demonstrate that we met that operational expectation. Now, this last one is going to be the heftiest part of this presentation. Okay, this is where the bulk of this is going to fall. There's going to be some keywords in there, and I'm going to let her get caught up for a second. There may be a separate document that she has to pull up.
So we're right there, correct?
Yep, starts right there. So as we present these up here, the supporting documentation is so large for these that we cannot put them into one PDF for that. So I apologize that we have to change. So this is equal education opportunity in a safe, non-discriminatory environment. When you see that word safe, you're going to have a lot of documentation to support the practices. So this is a highlight. It lists out the NTSS framework. You're going to talk about this is where the other parts of student services that aren't widely known. In student services, you're going to cover nursing services, social worker services, school counseling services. Those are all going to be highlighted in here, and that work is vast. If you want to know why student is before our services, this is the area. This is where much of the work, when people think of student services, they immediately think of discipline, attendance, grades. Grades actually is the overlap between ISD and student services, but this is where a lot of the work comes from. It's going to be, right? So if we go to this, so go to the picture one, the next slide. So even though they're out of order on there. So this is an annual tradition you've got. It's still called the See Something, Say Something. Even though that was named and modeled, this was something that was created at Beaufort High School years ago. And it is a performance, it's an anti-bullying performance. They've actually received statewide recognition. It's a national recognition for this. After COVID, it's been a struggle to get it back, but I'm happy to say it is up and running again. We did it this year. This is actually, I wanted to show this is the only artifact I'm going to have in there that's from 25, 26. But I was just so happy we're able to get it done again. I wanted to show this. This is a picture of our presentation. And this is, we did it at Beaufort High School, and we actually went to several other schools around the county. And we got, it targeted 6th grade students. We got a lot of positive feedback from families and communities and the schools about the presentation. They were very, if you know Miss Fest at Beaufort High School, she will tell you all about this presentation. The kids worked very, very hard to prepare for this. And it's just something that it's a shining light. Something. The next area we're going to talk about is the Stop It reporting system. I highlighted that before. These are the students self-reported in there. It is monitored 24 hours a day. That is something that you need to be aware of if you're going to work in the world of student services. We are legitimately on call 24 hours a day. So again, like I told you before, if the threshold meets a certain thing, their agents, they monitor those submissions and then they reach out to us or directly to law enforcement. We get automated emails, text messages as well, letting us know that there's something high level that's coming to stop it. And then we monitor, and we have to go back into the system to clear it out without them. So we can't just let it sit there and there be no follow-up with it. So that is the Stop It system that's in there. You will see the Stop It system. The next page, those are just some documentations with their dashboards. I wanted to provide you tool artifacts in the systems that we use. So those are the number of submitted, those ones that are open, and those that are closed. The reason that you won't see some of them are going to be closed, but some of them are submitted that they weren't tied to a specific school. So they crank to put it in there, and it wasn't, the student doesn't exist, the person they're reporting on doesn't exist, like they get someone to report on a Mickey Mouse, for example. You have a tool like this and you deal with children, you will have some submissions of it. Not that I would have ever done anything like that growing up, but, that is going. Well, all right. The next time, we're gonna kind of skip around a little bit, because my student services world covers a lot of areas. Now we're gonna talk about our academic counseling services. So each student has what they call an IGP beginning in 8th through 12th grade. This is something that there is a lot of overlap between student services and ISD. This is where our students, they create their pathway and their planning for high school. And that helps guide their schedule, and it helps the school build their master schedule to be able to serve our kids. And so those are just some data and information, how many IGP conferences were done. And it kind of explains what the IGP process looks like. And that is to build a plan for not the minimum to graduate, but what their other plans are. The next one is the nurses services, and I'm going to show you some data in here that is going to prepare you in advance that is going to be alarming. There are a lot of metrics in here. So the nurses services were able to pull and show how many of those are there. I'm not going to read to you in here, but I do want you to refer back to this because it really goes into what the nurses do in our school. The graphics in here are going to be very informative for you. Now, these are self-created graphics. So the district student acuity rate, 2021 to 2025. If you don't remember anything from this presentation today, this is what I want you to remember. These are self-reported areas that families report upon enrollment, upon re-enrollment every year. I'm going to go actually table by table because I want you to see the change that's occurred post-COVID. So in 21-22, I'm just going to go into asthma. I'm going to go into each area. And remember, this is not us reporting this information. This is what families are reporting to us based on enrollment. So in the school year 21-22, we had 171 students that reported to us that they had asthma. In 24-25, we had 1,402. Diabetes. In 21-22, we had 12 students report that they were diabetics. We had 77 in 24-25. Allergies. In 21-22, 175. 24-25, 1,540. 49 right now. The last two, these are alarming. Seizure disorders. We had 25 students report to us had seizure disorders, and I say that because if you just remember, we just updated a couple of meetings ago the AR that the state has put in place. I want you to know that as we look around the state of South Carolina and the country, these numbers that you're seeing here are consistent with what's happening across the country, which is not something that's localized to us. The seizures went from 25 in 21-22 to 147. And the last one is what you should already be aware of if you are not. These are students that are self-reported mental health disorders. In 21-22, we had 137 self-reported, and in 24-25, 1,160. Just got to take a moment to let that sink in for a second.
And when they report this, when it's self-reported, it's not actually required.
Isn't it the point of registration? So that's when the parents are doing it. Another thing to look at with stuff that is done, but built identification since post-COVID. At least,
Awareness,
yeah,
I would say.
yeah,
Cleared up the meeting.
or yes.
And
The seizure.
there's other, so I'm not going to begin to speculate as to the cause of something this large. But this is not localized, but it is alarming enough. We have really had to change practice on the way that we have done things. Honestly, everything that you see here, all of these different areas that are here, they're done in support, they're rooted in the foundation of this Wisconsin Library. All the supports that are in place, the things that we have done, the additional trainings that we're now doing. If you think back to the threat assessment slide I showed, and you saw how many of them were done at a low level. But when we know these things that I just presented to you, we have to consider that there's something deeper there. And I wanted to make sure that not just the committee understood, but even our own system understood of these trends. Because when you see a data trend with a sharp increase, that's one thing. This is a straight line increase. That volume is all. The next slide that is there. So you're going to see some overlap in numbers. If you look at 24, 25, going across that line, some of the visits to the nurses may check more than one box at a time. So that's why you're going to see some variation that's in there. So for example, if there was a child had an injury and came to the nurse, but also I have one of these others, and I needed to understand this myself. I really worked hard to try to understand. So total illness visit is kind of a summary, but if you saw a kid more than once, they may not be more than once in a day. That may be counted twice, but the same student was counted once. Other health visits and non-encounter visits, that non-encounter is like answering email or phone call. That's when they didn't physically encounter the student, but they provided services to them. Other health visits, whether they had some sort of, if we had an outside partnership, that they were assisting with like blood pressure screenings, dental screenings, setting them up with additional health supports. Medication administration, that is a role that our nurses do to provide that support to families K through 12. There's an entire process that has to be in place in order for them to not just to administer prescribed medication, but to administer any other form of medication to a student throughout the school day. And then the screenings, the treatment visits, those are the ongoing things that they have to come and see the nurse for. And then the screenings, we have health screenings, vision screenings, hearing screenings that our nurses have conducted, not just through the nurses, but with our outside partnerships. And so those are reflected there. So they are gainfully employed.
So if a kid got whacked in PE class and needed to put some ice on it,
It has to be documented here.
like that medication in or
Those would be
treatment.
That would be an injury. Treatment is when they have some sort of ongoing, if they have to come get a breathing treatment. If they have, even say it's like if they have to come get an insulin check or something like that, that's going to fall into those categories. There are some students that our nurses have to have documented monitoring of daily and actually for some students, we have some students that have medical issues, they actually have a nurse assignment. They have very severe problems.
It would be a concern.
Right. The next one is chronic absenteeism. This rate is not easy to understand. This is something that is a priority for me new into this role. So we have some existing initiatives. There is a link between student absenteeism and student achievement. It is clear. And that's not our data. Our data supports that, but nationally, data is very clear on that. So I'm going to flip to the slide, and this is the chronic absenteeism rate. This is an extremely difficult number to define. That is because when you look at the rate, there's a couple factors that go into this. And the number of students. So basically, you take the number of students that were considered the chronically absent versus the total number that was ever in the database for that year. It is not the total number of kids that were enrolled with us at our 45-day count, 135-day count, and the 180-day count. You are going, the Education Oversight Committee just released a report on chronic absenteeism. They have different metrics. One of the challenging things about putting this number in front of you, I'm going to tell you that this is our number that we would represent for ourselves. We actually found some state errors in their database. So those are for our board members that look at data for researchers on the site. We found an error from the state. Meeker County, I'm proud that we did that because they had to go back and do a statewide correction on chronic absenteeism, and they're currently doing that right now. They just accidentally duplicated their numbers from 23-24 to 24-25 on the report card. So if you look at, if I give you a number that you're going to find inconsistent on this district website, the data services team discovered that when I was seeing why does our school report card number not match the number that I have, and it doesn't match the number that we pulled. It's because there was error in the data from the state. So this is when a student misses a threshold of days when they miss more than 10 days in the school year. That's where the chronic absenteeism rate is in. So that's, you see a slight reduction in that. But as we begin to push on this, this is something that we're slightly lower than the state. But this is something that we want to address locally, and we really believe that this is going to have an impact on us, and this is something that we really have to engage our students and our families on, understanding the importance of school. That number's dry. All right. We are under the McKinney-Vento Act. This is where we talk about homelessness. Without reading all these things, I will say you the most misunderstood thing with homeless. When we say homeless to the general citizen, they envision a child or someone living on the street. The definition of homelessness far exceeds that. When there's not a consistent place for a family to live, that will qualify as homeless. And so we provide a lot of services to families going to be in there. You see the total number of students served, and the number decreased from 23-24 to 24-25. The number of the students were served. That doesn't necessarily mean the number of families, it's the number of students. That number went from 342 to 259, which that is a good thing. And so we have some additional grant funding we've utilized to purchase some transportation to help support these families so they can maintain their educational setting when they're experiencing homelessness. And there's some other supports that we give families in connection with our partners of food, clothing, shelter. Those are the primary areas that we want to focus on with families. Now we're going to talk about Gaggle. Gaggle is the system that we talked about before. It's an online monitoring system, but there's actually two parts to Gaggle. We have a portion in here to Gaggle, and you're not going to see me write about it a ton in here. There's the Gaggle Reach Out service. Gaggle Reach Out, so I think you all are aware of the monitoring system for the threats or unsafe behavior. Gaggle has another component that we have started using in Meeker County School District. It's called Gaggle Reach Out. That's where they have trained crisis counselors. Kids and parents can reach out to if they are in crisis, and it is monitored 24 hours a day. Do not have a ton of data to put in front of you for that for two reasons. One, it is a newer system. So we actually started using it in January of last year. I do have some data, but this is where it gets very, very sensitive and identifying the families that are reaching out for mental health support. Sometimes it is the student reaching out for support. Sometimes it's the parent reaching out on behalf of the student. We have pushed some of this to our schools, but this is something that we are about to really expand. We've added it to ClassLink. We actually added it today to ClassLink, so it's more accessible to students. And this is something we wanted to make sure that the new service was able to support our families We've actually, Andrea Murray actually tested it herself. She does spot checks on it, and she actually calls to make sure that someone's there responding to us. So we had used that, but it's a 24/7 thing to make sure that we have a healthy and safe environment. The data insights from Gaggle, I believe, in all the different partnerships we have are excellent. So last year, Gaggle had 18,591 accounts. Now you do need to understand, it shows the breakdown, and you're going to see the different types of categories that were in there. You got to remember, if the student's writing a short story in ELA, and they're writing, even when they're on running, many of which turn out to be harmless, it's still going to flag it. Parents are still surprised that so anything in Google Docs or anything that's in there, the system does monitor that. Andrea Murray is the point of contact. Yes, sir. And these are the administrative regulations that you're going to see that address this area. They're all printed here. I do want to take you through some of the supporting documents. Can you scroll up to the next one, please? All right, so these are some of the threat assessments, behavioral threat assessments. You can see a breakdown by school, and you can see the total number of in there and how many were actually, which grades are impacted. And some of the graphs are cut off. I don't know why that it's just showing. These are the first little graph over here to the right. That's only showing the pre-K to K impact. The others will show, obviously, you'll see the total number and school. These are just examples of some of the reports I can pull from there. Also, the data insights, it breaks it down a little bit more by category. You're going to see that in there, and it shows the time frames that were pulled. So this specific report, it is an example of how we can pull active and real-time reports and break it down by category. And you can see the date range at the top. So the first overall graphic that I put in there was a year-line summary, but this is an example of how we can pull it periodically to look at trends. We do, however, and I want you to scroll. This is keep scrolling until you see suicide case management. This is something that is not easy to report on. It's not easy to talk about, but we do have students, we do have staff that we talked about the behavioral threat assessments. When a child through writing or through word discloses intent for self-harm, we do have our staff are trained to do what's called a suicide risk assessment. And this shows the number that is there. It shows the impact by grade level. And even if it shows the number of that are considered low, the number that are considered high, it's all broken out by there. And depending on the answers and responses to the interviews that they're going, that's where it's determined the level that it comes out to. Depending on where it falls, depending on the subsequent action that occurs from that. When you see rescreen, that's when something was said, but they needed further clarification. It may need to be rescreened as a threat assessment instead of a suicide risk assessment. But you can see the information that is there is something we take very seriously within our school district. But it is not a comfortable topic for me to sit in front of you and talk about, but I wanted you to be aware of the actions and steps that we have when there's a concern for that. All of these things are connected to one another. In Gaggle, for example, if a student writes something in Gaggle, it may lead to a suicide risk assessment that we have to conduct for the student plan. This one. Yeah.
What's going on? What grade? Okay. But the middle grade too. Yes.
There are sometimes when a particular student, so I will answer two grades. students begin to, like I'm not having birds and bees talk. Students develop at different ages and different rates depending on the level of trauma. So where a student may, go through puberty in middle school in some places, for some that experience a lot of trauma, they begin to go through that fourth and fifth grade. When they begin to hit that age, the hormones begin to go all over the place. And when they're upset about something, and they may make comments or statements where you see peaks at certain schools, that is when I have to be careful what I say in the next couple of statements. You may have a student that this is a repetitive behavior for them, and we have to conduct numerous assessments for the same student. Even though we know that it is not necessarily it's more of a behavioral issue, but if they make those certain comments, we have to go through that process. And that's where you're going to see there may be many, but the many may come back as a low level. Even if it's low level, every time these comments are made, we have to go through that process. So, but that's where you see in the lower levels, in fourth, fifth, and middle school, that's where you're going to see the more erratic behaviors because of the age of the student and where they are. Middle school student will say just about anything when they're upset. So that's why you're going to see that through this grade. That's where you can see a spike there. Those are, so you're talking about the impact levels.
Yeah, two different ones.
So some of that is the different, it's a bad visual representation for me. So it's supposed to show the impact levels and the different types of that by there, but when I condense the graph, it cut off some of that. So I need to go back and redo that because it's showing the different impact levels of the school, but when I condensed it to try to put it on the page and you can see it, it messed up the visual representation. So I just wanted you to be able to show that we had a way to measure by school, but it's not showing all the different impact levels.
I think some schools are left off.
Yeah, and some schools are left off on
Um, I think Marcio Elementary, and Marcio Elementary has a large number of special kids. Imagine there's a correlation that as well. For special education board.
without identifying specific students. There would be a correlation between students, but there would be some. Can't say specifically a certain school site.
But we could also be action by reinforcement. And any single reinforcement, hey, if I do student center. So I throw it to the student as well. Yeah.
So there are a lot of supporting documents in here. I do want, Ms. Robinson to scroll to a couple more that are in there. You can see our quarter, as you're flipping, you can see our quarterly reports. I do want her to keep scrolling until you get to some of our manuals that are in there as well. You're gonna see our crisis management. Wow. But there were a lot of supporting documents, and you can see that was an accurate statement. You're going to see crisis response counseling. As she scrolls to there, it's going to take her a while to catch up. This is an example of our manual that we've used in the past. We do have one updated for 25-26. But I did not include it in here. If any of you ever need it, I can provide it. Again, I've tried to remain consistent and only report on what was there for 24-25. But those are some examples. We've got these things that this outlines our process. It outlines everything we do for the kind of crisis response counseling. So it kind of aligns to all the different things we talked about here, because we, again, further evidence to support, the operational expectations that are there. And you do see all the different ARs that we talked about that align to this. They're going to be there. And then you also will see some of the protocols that we go through when we're conducting these assessments. I wanted you, it was important for you to have this so you can be able to see the process we do that goes back and reflects the data that we shared today. All right. So as she is scrolling, I'm going to end with it. We're getting there. The last little tab that's there is just an overview of the different things that we are doing. And I'm proud of what we do. So this work is not easy. We're dealing with kids and families that are when they are in a crisis. I'm proud of our folks. And so we're ongoing to refine our procedures, particularly our data management of it, and then our presenting of data to principals to look at trends to see how we can adjust our practice. But I wanted to be as informative as possible on some very sensitive topics for our students.
One of the things I think is great from having the backup for 13. You show that student services is not just discipline, but it is the support and the holistic component of the student and the services that can be provided to help. It's not just, this is the hallway you go to when you're in trouble. And this is the area of support that we provide to help you to the next page. So, thank you.
I wanted to be able to show that almost a continual effort, both for academics and for behavior, and then supporting kids and families through a variety of challenges they face. So I wanted to be able to truly document that and show you guys this step. And I really wanted to reflect our work with you. Are there any questions about OE14?
We're gonna need a motion for OE 13, well, OE 13 and 14. So we can go on to the time. Yeah.
That we adopt OE 13.
We should go back. Now that one I'm not really quite sure because it came out of the meeting, and I think it has to go back to the full board because it was the full board that pulled it off of consent and asked for it to come back. So I think that one will go back to the full board. And this one, if you want, can go on consent agenda if that's what you all want.
Except 14.
So we have to do 13, so take 13.
13's got to come back.
13 will have to go back to the full board because that
Edited items.
as a,
Oh,
Yes, so the clarification,
Clarification from OE 13.
yes, but it has to be the edited items to consent.
I don't know, I think it goes to,
Oh,
because she took it off consent,
She
so
took
took
it
it
off
off the
consent.
consent, so it needs to go back to the full board.
Under committee updates.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Then a motion will be provided at that time.
Are we ready to move on to ARs?
I'm excited if you are.
Oh.
Just a smaller pile.
Yeah, it is a small amount, but we're gonna roll through the format. So I've got everything in the stack here. to remain consistent with what we've done in the past. You're gonna have the clean version. So we're gonna start with SS35. You're gonna have a clean version, edited version, and then you're gonna have and I say edited version, what we typically call the red line version, and then and then you will have an executive summary that shows the changes that were there. So in SS35, this is contest for students. And it goes through what that looks like in there, and it's gonna address basically were updated the non-discrimination superintendent's expectation and incorporated the full name of different county school district. We added a new section titled the non-discrimination title, which you're gonna see consistently through many of our ARs that we have to update. There are really not many changes to the intent of the the AR. And then it talked about contests, emphasizes educational value rather than prizes. This concept was already addressed, so it was just cleaned up and streamlined a little bit, and there are no changes there. And so that is SS35. SS41. Feel like we're signing along here. Same thing, same format. This is student insurance coverage. The only thing I do want to highlight is even though that this is coming out of student services, anytime that we have an AR that impacts different departments within the system, we do sit and meet and go through these. I have to call out and highlight and thank Dr. Shadows but the lady sitting at the end of the table really helps us go through these ARs and make sure that they are written well. That lady sitting back there also does well. These are the team of folks that help. They're the ones that make all these red line versions to make sure that all of this is updated and done. So Wendy, our legal department, they all collaborate, and Savannah, that's within student services. We got a really good team that does this. I highlight that because when there's going to be a student insurance coverage like we talked about here, it's going to list it out. We are going to sit with finance and the other departments to make just statement, risk management to make sure that these things are in line. So section 1 and 2 are 3 that were there. Section 3 was removed, and then other things were removed from this it is just basically cleaning the work language up and making it consistent, and then you can see the changes that were done here to get it to, you can see what it was in the original form versus where it was changed to do that and to make sure everything was consistent with the protocol.
So there's no through.
There's no through there.
So the next one went through.
So the number changed. So there were 4 sections.
Right.
So when they changed that, there are now only 3 sections. So that's why I said remove. So section 4 became section 3.
Yeah,
This thing goes right through here, and it says 4. We just had to change it back to 3.
this is nothing. This will be through.
Yes, it should have struck
It is
through.
right on this one.
Structure 4.
We should have struck through 4 on the red line version, but I believe it is correct on the clean version. Yeah. There's an error in there. But the clean, so what the important part is the clean version came out. Oh, no, it shows your reading with intent. So in all the editing, the team made all the correct editing. That was my editing mistake. We'll call it that. They were. All right, so we have SS53. These are student fees, fines, and charges. You again will see the updates that are there. Hopefully, I think right? This one's correct, start taking. All right, and so section 1 and 2 were revised there. You see in section 4, section 3, subsection B, it revised the language to state that neither BCSD may charge or fee. I think those were moved around. And then added a language to the section stated may evaluate the claims of hardship. So you'll see how D was removed. I think that I'm not sure that we did in our I'm losing myself here. I think that I know that the clean version came out right. I think the edits came out right. I'm not sure that when we're listing out the changes that we are listed it. Yep. But that's what the final outcome. Last one, thank goodness.
Wait, there's more.
Yeah, this is the last one for me. And I get to listen to the other stuff. So this is cost assistance for academic competition winners. There are 3 areas on there that revise the section to include language reflecting the expectation. Section 2 is the same, and then there were no changes made to section 3, although it looks like the numbers were added. And you'll see, as always, the updated legal records at the top. And I am done.
And then, board members of the NA, you would note that student services has been underway for a while, catching up and redefining. Not only that, but library role. Part to get everything in line with that. So I was excited that as we transition to ARs for instructional purposes. I had this evening Diana Grumsky, our director for multimedia programs, federal programs. Director Nicholas Flowers is joining us as well for accountability, and our director is the secondary teacher environment. You'll have the new items coming forward. You will please recognize. It's listed as 3, but in IS 25 is provided to you multilingual learner program MLP. And it's provided to you in Spanish as well. Right, la programa para alumnos multilinguales, right? MLP. Spanish version will be provided to you as well as IS 44. With that, I want to turn over to you. Masters are in the native presentation.
And the only thing I'll say before I turn it over to Diana to go through IS 25 with us is a little notation before Mr. Flowers shares IS 44 and go right after Ms. Rumsky. That one is a little bit different because we have 3 ARs that dealt with assessment, examinations, and testing. And as we started to look at it, it's really Mr. Flowers who said, this might be confusing for some of our families or community members who may come in. Well, I'll look at the testing AR. Did you look at the right one? So he did a little bit of triple work because what he did was take all 3 of those ARs to create new ones, comprehensive on assessment. So before they started, I just didn't note that. And of course, Ms. Rumsky does do it well anyway because she has to put it in English and Spanish. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Rumsky.
Okay, like Dr. Cox said, in front of you, you will have the executive summary, the red line version, and the updated version. And I will say, to speak to the collaboration of this group, Dr. Cox and I, and the director of exceptional learners, Ms. Deetra Holmes, we met and we discussed some things that we're working now towards assisting our families with L as well as MLP students who basically, as we say in BCSD, they're all our students. So there's a lot of work being done behind the doors and the windows and the walls that we have to help our students at Beaufort County School District, as well as Nick helping tremendously with writing this, with having to do with accountability and assessment, as well as doing the right things for our students, and with Ms. Mackenzie's edits. So thank you very much. I'll just get to kind of present about it. All right, so you will see that in section 1, there were no changes. Section 2, we added the BCSD non-discrimination clause. Section 4, we added calendar to delineate days allowed for enrollment and screening. That is federal and state guidance. We added language to proficiency level. That's to clarify English language proficiency level that our students are to acquire within a 5-year time period. We added access alt clarification as assessment for tier 1 instruction, because they not only get access for regular students, but our Ls take access alt, some of them, not all. They have to be identified through an IEP. Then we have section 6, we added language for ILAPs. That is, I will find the whole word for you. It is the individualized language acquisition plan that is specific to language, not a disability. That is how we support and monitor for a language. Correct. The two are, yes, the two must be in place for students to be offered an alternate testing assessment for any state assessment, etc. It can't be one without the other. They support each other. And we changed the MLP coordinator to director. And then all the way at the bottom, we added a statement that BCSD participates in all required monitoring visits and audits as required by federal and state expectations. We actually had one last year. And we did well. We got lovely results. And even the state mentioned how well we do things, for example, having bilingual liaisons in our schools, etc. So we wanted to add that on there, a statement about that. And we updated to include all pertinent federal, state, and county references with memorandums, etc. And we added another federal law case to support our students and just doing the right thing by them when we added Lau versus Nichols. We only had Plower versus Deaf. Yes, ma'am. And we have it in an AR, and we thought it was extremely important to add it. You're welcome. We had a Carolina TESOL conference over in Charlotte, and it was lovely to see that we are doing things at BCSD that are being modeled across 2 state lines. So that's lovely to see, and to present at those conferences and take back what we're creating here, I think is commendable for us.
Speak to why that case is so, why is it important?
Well, I think because it's important that our students are protected and our families are protected in terms of they are basically language instruction in a public school for students with limited English proficiency. If they are not given that opportunity, is a violation of their civil rights. So that should be noted here. Yes. Language. Mm-hmm.
So I think you'll talk about Crampers and what about support. It is a seminal piece to where that.
This might be really minor.
Go for it, Dr. Carr.
In 4B,
Okay.
you added the word calendar. Is there a difference between a day and a calendar day?
Calendar year, meaning we include weekends. So it used to say 14 days, and then it became part of our compliance issues were that our staff was saying, oh, we have 14 days to get this screening and this paperwork done. And the state said calendar days, including the weekend. Yep. school days versus calendar days. You're welcome.
So I get the AR that our students enjoy coming to school the most to participate in, and that is testing. So this is being driven by consolidating 3 ARs that deal with testing in some aspect, but also aligning it to some of the things that the state is seeing, and the state is pushing districts to really firm up within their own processes and procedures. So for this AR then, we added the non-discrimination in section 2, section 3 being adherence to testing guidelines. This was pulled from AR 51 section 2 and added into here. Section 4 was moved from AR 51 section 3, and it looks at the tests that we administer here. Really the big ones being that formative assessments. It used to refer to MAP, but it's formative assessments that we do that are state approved, along with the traditional statewide assessments, college entrance exams, readiness assessments that we are mandated to provide students. Section 5 updated our EOC end of course assessments. It updated some language there around the weighting. And in the past, it used to be English 1, but now it is English 2. Section 6 looks at the alternate assessment for students. So this is whenever we are working on the alternate assessment, I work very closely with Dr. Cox and his team, specifically Ms. Holmes, the Director of Special Education, to be able to make sure that we are correctly identifying these. The State Department has really firmed up that districts only have 1% of students participate, is what they want to see. And in order to participate, it's a very specific criteria. And even as time has gone on, they have firmed it up. So this section was added to really make sure that we are crystal clear on the expectations on SC Alt, because it is an area that the state and the federal governments are both very hyper focused on. So we wanted to make sure we captured it like we would EOCs. The next section for final assessments is no change there. We added in-service training. It was moved from AR 52 section 4 to put into here. We do provide regular training to our school testing coordinators who provide it to their teachers. The next one, notice of deficiencies, was moved from AR 52 section 5 to be placed into here. Then I moved assistance to the student coming from 52 section 6. Section 11 is looking at makeup tests, and this just helps us align that if the student's unable to participate, that they will provide testing back when they return to school. Each year, we usually do receive updated guidance from the State Department over the rules that come into play there, especially as test security becomes stricter. So this just ensures that we have language there, but we will always comply with any updated guidance from the State Department. Section 12 remained. Section 13, test security. The state is putting a greater emphasis on here because it could take from $60,000 to $100,000 to rewrite 1 or 2 test questions. So as each test question gets jeopardized, they are firming it up. It also could take 2 to 3 years for an item to be developed and become fully operational. So if we do not have enough test questions in the bank as a state for EOC's SC Ready, for example, then it becomes a greater problem on both the system as a whole to get enough questions to measure students, but also on the taxpayers. So the state is pushing test security to stay above. I will just say from when I started my career till now. I remember when smartwatches became jeopardizing test security. And now the big conversation is around smart glasses because they actually embed cameras in there, all the way down to students using burner phones. So we used to be focused on a cell phone. Now we are focused on a student's cell phones, plural. So trying to stay above them is very difficult. So yes.
Right, state.
Yep.
Well, as if we could take, and it is not easy to assess.
It takes the writers about the first year is usually just like getting their thoughts on paper, writing it. Then they have to take it to committees that look at the bias of the question, the accuracy of the question, and rate the question in various ways. Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Once that's done, about a year and a half, it then goes to field testing where you just need to collect data on the question. If it is too hard or too easy, they generally throw the question out. And then if the data comes in where the question is kind of in the middle, it's just right, then they will move the question that following year to be operational. So it is a very long process to get it right. So then just within test security, we identified our process in there. Do know that they will refer violations or potential infractions to SLED for future investigation or for informational purposes only. So whenever we are mandated, so if anything happens that is any type of irregularity, schools are mandated to report it directly to the district, and then we are required to report it in a timely manner directly to the state. And then depending on the infraction or irregularity, the state triages. So you do see some references into SLED, and that is a state process. So just making sure that we are fully transparent with our teachers and parents over that process. Then just kind of capturing in there the violations in relation to the law and state regulations. And then in order to be very transparent with our test administrators, monitors, proctors, we did add and clarified some language around the process in which it goes for any type of disciplinary action that may come into play, and notifying the principal and getting them involved within that process. And then that last section adds language specific to electronic devices. Would not be shocked if this is not updated in the future as electronics continue to evolve, but the state is pushing districts to getting some language in there as electronics are becoming more and more burdensome on the testing environment. And then the last section is just unifying language around homeschool. So it added a section in regards to providing the opportunity to assess our homeschool families if they would like to take that PSAT assessment or the pre-ACT outside of usually 9th grade or 11th grade, because that is not state funded. So we are able to do it, but just providing that they notify the school they'll be testing within 30 days. That way our school testing coordinators have the time they need to get computers set up and payment and properly put in the system. Thank you so much.
I understand that in the back in 170, I think the last section that that we're required to tell parents about the that we're required to talk to them.
Homeschool parents.
No, you said, I think it was about slight information about, yeah, that part. How are we telling parents that question?
So if it involves, if we are notified directly, then we will go directly to, if we are notified by the state that they've referred something involving a student, we would go to the principal and work with them to notify the parent. Generally, what happens is it is a cell phone that's in question, and our test manual that schools receive explicitly lays out that they will look, an administrator, usually the principal, will look at the cell phone with the parent. So the parent's usually brought in from the get-go before they even touch the device. We have not had a situation where any of our students have been referred to SLED. So we've not had any of those instances of a student situation, thankfully. So, but it would be from the get-go when they're notified with the parent from the beginning. And then if we receive, as soon as we receive a letter, we would reach out to the parent, with the principal.
We were seating next to each other, taking assessment. There's a seating chart. The state may analyze their responses way too soon. And they have been able to detect that probably. And the letter comes to the state to Mr. Flowers, Mr. Principal, the investigation office. And predominantly students are very honest to say that, yeah, he paid me $1. But that's how sophisticated the state level is now at the analysis of assessments. They could determine mathematically from teacher. Treating, sorry. Yeah, it's.
And every teacher in the district is required, when they administer a state assessment, they are required to provide our district testing coordinator and myself a copy of the seating chart. So, and we do know they have pulled seating charts, and they may look and be like, okay, Dr. Cox sat beside Nick, and so, and their answers are too spot on mathematically when they do it and do a deeper dive. And so we turn in a lot of information, even outside of test scores, so for the state to analyze.
And how long have this been in terms of this is something new, or is this something been in existence for the last couple of years? Or?
Yeah. So it's been probably the seating charts and all of that have probably been about 5 years, I would say, if not a little more than that. Yep. And what has happened is, as more and more violations happen, the state wants us to turn it into them now. So It may be that we collect it ourselves, but now we collect and submit them. Anybody that enters into a testing environment is required to sign a state document for their test security agreement. And it used to be that schools were required to maintain copies of them. Now the state's pushing for the district to also maintain a copy. And then we've also had in a financial audit, they actually requested principal and school testing coordinator to have a copy of their test security agreement. So the state is monitoring that also. So we are starting to submit those documents even to the state. So we have had testing violations, but nothing that has been so egregious that it has caused any major problems. So there's always going to be things like, a student does something to their computer, jeopardizes it. A lot of it is truly innocent mistakes from our teachers that just have a lapse and they forget for something. And yes. Yep.
Or the phone's not off, but it's on mute.
Yes.
Things like that.
If the bells go off during state testing, I have to be notified because it disrupted having the test.
Fire alarm.
Yes.
Right. Things like that.
Yep.
Right.
Bonding.
Yes.
Yep.
Some of it is out of our control. Yeah.
If a teacher, they've had testing tickets for every student, and if the teacher sets them in the teacher's lounge when they were getting a quick drink on the way to the room and they forget them there and they are no longer with that teacher, that's a testing violation. truly sometimes an innocent mistake by the teacher, but it is a testing violation.
Which normally, if the state asks, Mr. Flowers for information, then we have to submit why it happened and, everybody has to write their own personal narrative explaining what happened. So yeah, it's very detailed and we have a great
Yes.
process to get it done.
Yes,
Oh my God. That's right.
you are correct.
The box is going with me to the ladies' room. Yes, that is correct. That is correct. That is correct. Says all the testing administrators. Technology.
Health Advisory Committee update.
So with the chair, I'm gonna have this Mackenzie recognition. And I'm going for chair.
So what I'm gonna read to you was read at the South Carolina Association for the Advancement of Health Education and Recognition of our Health. The Beaufort County School District Health Advisory Committee is a volunteer group of dedicated community members that continues to pour into the Beaufort County School District with their expertise and the giving of their time. Over this past year, the committee has gone above and beyond, exceeding the number of required meetings by almost triple. They worked through the review of health education materials involving the reproductive health curriculum. This included reviewing 2 entire textbooks totaling over 1,200 pages of text, 40 PowerPoint presentations, and 89 auxiliary resources. Additionally, they reviewed programs and materials for Aaron's Law and Gavin's Law. The review was presented to the Beaufort County School District Academic Committee and ultimately the full Beaufort County School District School Board. Each committee member dedicated many hours over and above what was required in an effort to not only be in compliance with the state, but also to equip the district's teachers and schools with curriculum appropriate for all students. Consequently, their efforts and commitment to the Beaufort County School District has made a significant impact on every student and education teacher. From training teachers and other school personnel to the lessons that are being taught in all schools. And I would like, if I can, to share the names of our committee members. These are those hardworking who've done like three times the number of meetings they're supposed to. Cynthia Coburn Smith, Constance Pope, Wanda Delays, Holton Pierce, Caitlin Shacklock. Amy Pryor is our chair of our committee. Emily Gray serves as the coordinator of physical education and health for our district and sits on the committee. And Dr. Mary Stratus helps to lead that as our chief officer. With no further ado, we have a plaque that we would like to present.
Let's do this for the full.
We would like to, we would like to, so that would be your recommendation.
Let's do it. Yeah, it's, it need to be.
This is huge. It really is.
That's all right.
It's so that we invite the committee.
Yes.
Committee members?
Oh, yes, please.
Perfect.
Is that fine?
I'll put it on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you got that? Thank you.
And I want to thank. So thank you. Madam Chair.
Any future topics?
I have a question. Our December 9th is the only meeting that we're having in December. So does the committee need to meet in December or will it start again in January? Because you wouldn't meet in. Is there a need for you to meet in December prior to the December 9th meeting?
We have a handful of ARs.
Yeah.
You have represented again, so.
my only question for that would be, if I wait till, is there any way of having academic committee prior to somehow, see, I'm trying to figure out that if I can have academic, yes, exactly. If not, I have to wait till February. So, what if,
First meeting in June.
The first board meeting in January
yes, ma'am,
is January.
six. So, the second board meeting would be on the 20th. Is there a
There is
possibility?
not going to, it'll be a work session, so they would also be,
So either way, I would have to wait till February.
or, I'm not sure if you'll have ready. We have 2 dates, the first week of January, December, that is available if you want to get it for the December 9th meeting,
What dates are available back?
the first and the second.
I am being Greenville, I waited 6 years for that. Was that round table? Every year I cancel and send someone else.
Yeah, the last week of December is my last week.
That's hard to so. So then we will meet in January. I will, because next week is holiday.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair as a team. I do have to have separate board members, please. So are you fine with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Sorry. Madam Chair. So then we will,
Schedule something in January.
it's right, and it is a team time. Never call. Keep the topic.
I have. I'd like to have a discussion on. We have all of the results of the state system. But I'd like to maybe learn a little bit more about what we're doing with that most.
Maybe in the middle,
Next week, well,
at least into the middle, right?
let's-
More of an instructional
Yeah.
support
it's some like,
than looking at the data. So yes, we can bring guidance forward with the in the area of accountability. So we will address our grades 3 through 8, and then at the high school, support key DLC areas. Okay,
how we're addressing those.
yes. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you guys for taking notes. Yes, so we're calling.